The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I think I know more about the environment than most people.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero Carbon
East off.
Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista. I'm Ian Collins. This is episode 17 on our carbon-free journey through the issues that are dominating more headlines today than at any other time in our history. Who knows what impact these podcasts have on the powers that be, but the sight of the business secretary sweating in the House of Commons the other day could be a bit of a clue. At least we hope so. If you're unaware of what we do here, here's an explainer. This series is essentially about the views, campaigns and inner thoughts of one man. Dale Vince, the entrepreneur and environmentalist, built his success in the green energy sector, the owner of Ecotricity, the world's first green energy company, and also the chairman of Forest Green Rovers. Each episode, of course, we bring you the dominating issues from the biggest agenda on the planet right now, the environment and climate change. And hello to you, Dale, and I guess we should start with incredible news this week that the UK has been coal-free for 2 months.
That is big news because it's like the first time since the Industrial Revolution that our electricity supply has been coal-free for so long. And we've been saying this now like every week for 2 months because, you know, first it was a month and then it was 5 weeks and it was 6 weeks. And the longer it goes on for, every time it happens, every new day is a new record, actually. But it is amazing, and obviously the big question is, can we stay that way? You know, what can we do to make sure coal doesn't come back? And in that respect, I think we're aided currently by the lockdown, and it'll really be a question of at what speed and in which way we come out of the lockdown. Around about the end of the summer.
So just explain them for those who are just kind of coming in onto this discussion, not aware of how we get our energy. You know, if you had to break that down into a pie chart, coal was once there. It isn't anymore, at least for the last 2 months. It's bound to make a grim return at some level. But what makes up the other component parts of how we fuel this country?
Yeah, coal used to be the biggest source of electricity in our country. And before the lockdown, renewables had grown to be just over 30%. When I began in the early 90s, it was about 3%, and it was all big hydro from just after the Second World War. So it wasn't like the new renewables that we know of today. And I don't know what part coal had before the lockdown. It wasn't big. It had been shrinking for a long time. Sure. I'm going to guess between 10 and 20%. Nuclear sits at around 20 to 25%, and then gas plays a major role in the middle. So coal has been falling out of favour for quite a while. We passed peak coal a very long time ago. Sure. Right now we're at zero, and the question in my mind, a lot of other people, is when can we get it to stay at zero? Yeah,
and is it just coal? I mean, everything else gets the green light. Is it just coal we should be concerned about?
Well, it's just the dirtiest way to make electricity. Well, if you discount diesel, which plays a role, but very much on the margins, and that needs to stop. But it's the dirtiest way to make electricity. Gas is far cleaner, still a fossil fuel, still a driver of climate change, so still a problem. But it's a question of choosing the least bad options as we transition to 100% renewable.
And now, as we go forward, when we talk about renewable energy, what primarily is at the top of that list then?
It's wind energy. Wind energy offshore and onshore are playing a big role. Solar has played an amazing role in the last few years, the rate at which it's grown. And, the potential in our country, in onshore wind only, we have enough resource if you screen out all of the places you can't put wind, so it's a practical resource to power the whole country 4 times over. In offshore, it's more again in solar if you do the same screening exercise. We have enough solar potential to power the country about 8 times over. So between the wind and the sun, we have more than enough land and resource to power the electricity we need entirely from renewables.
What would it take then to put in place the infrastructure required to do both of those things? Give us an idea of the size of what that project would look like.
Well, the technology exists, and it's being mass produced, it's economic, it's reliable. We need a smart grid to enable 100% to happen. So our current grid is a little bit dumb, it's kind of reactive, but we need a grid that balances intelligent demand with generation. That's coming. Technology is enabling it. Grid scale battery storage is a big part of that. But in other respects, the renewables technology we need is there. What we need is for the government to step in and change the playing field.
Yeah.
At the moment, we put twice as much money into supporting fossil fuels as we do renewable energy. We need to immediately reverse that and actually ramp down fossil fuel subsidies, get rid of them completely. And then we need some positive planning rules for renewable energy. At the moment, fossil fuels are prioritized and renewables are not. That's the subject of a legal challenge that we've brought against the government in the last few weeks. So it's really stuff that the government can do. It's a question of where we spend public money and what rules we set for planning. At the moment, all of that holds renewables back. If we change that, the tech exists, the companies are there waiting to build it, and we can get to 100%, I would say, in 10 years' time.
Yeah. So was Thatcher ahead of her game then, when it came to coal?
Ahead of her time.
Yeah, in a curious way, for different reasons, but
yeah, sometimes you can be right for the wrong reason, kind of. So she was against coal, I think, because of the power cuts in the 70s where the unions held the country to ransom, and she wanted to break that. I don't think it was about environmental issues.
No,
it was,
but the upshot amounted, or sort of amounts to something.
Yeah. I would say right for the wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons, indeed.
Yeah. She also liberalised the energy industry, actually, privatised it and liberalised it. And that enabled electricity to come into being in the mid-90s. It was possible for the first time to be an independent electricity company amongst the state monopolies that had just been privatised. Wow. So she did, let's say she did two good things.
You're going to be wearing a blue rosette soon, Dale. I can see this. I can see this. I've got your Christmas gift all worked out.
I'm nearly old enough for a blue rinse.
Here's a question from Christine on Facebook. I'm going vegan. Any tips on cheese replacements? There was a couple of areas, isn't there, when people consider changing their diet to, whether it's vegetarianism to start with and then going vegan. There's a couple of areas where these question marks come up, and cheese seems to be one of them.
Yeah, cheese and bacon, I reckon.
Yeah.
You hear about that, something that people are quite addicted to, let's say attached to. But cheese does come up quite often, and I'm not like a massive cheese fan, but I saw this question coming 5 minutes ago, and so I did some quick research. I sent an email to my partner because I know we've got some great alternative cheese in the fridge, and one of them is a cheddar made with coconut oil, and it's just amazing. And so I've got it sat in front of me on my screen. It's actually an Ocado own brand, free from cheddar style. But the other one that we're really loving is London Fresh, Mouse's favorite camembert, and honestly it's amazing. It's so like a camembert in texture and everything, and it's entirely free from dairy. Like I say, I'm not a big cheese fan, so if you're a proper cheese fan, you may find them slightly different to the original, but I find them amazing.
Nice. We'll come on to Trump in a moment for a couple of reasons, but because Trump's always in a bit of a Twitter storm, and you were in a Twitter storm this week as well, Dale, because there was a piece in the Daily Mail where you kind of upset some Tranmere fans. Is that about right?
Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah, and my crime was to share my opinion on social media. Hey, who does that? But it was in respect of something that was bothering them. So obviously the season ended prematurely for football, and there was a lot of discussion amongst the EFL about how to judge promotion and relegation places, given that we weren't going to play the last 10 games. And Tranmere were in the relegation zone, and the proposal by the EFL would have seen them relegated to League Two, which is not the end of the world, but I guess it was to some of them. And they produced this very complicated proposal with some, I would say, statistical manipulation, came up with an idea to create something they call margin of error, plus or minus 8 points, which basically, anyway, the end game was, lo and behold, Tranmere was saved. Who would have thought it?
Well, they came up with a way to make them win the league, basically.
Not quite, but they avoided relegation. And I simply said I thought it was a wrong idea. Shouldn't happen. Bad for football. And they didn't like it. But there was a big vote that day of the clubs in the EFL on about 5 different proposals, actually, because there were 2 or 3 from other clubs that also, were particularly addressing the interests of those other clubs. There was some self-interested proposals in there, and the board's was the best one. It won. Everything else was turned down handsomely. And the board proposal won. So, common sense prevailed, is what I said on Twitter, and they didn't like that. But
the Daily Mail quoted you as saying, "Can't wait to descend on your tin pot village again."
That's what they said, not me.
Oh, they said that too. Right? Okay, that was their response. That was their response to you.
That's what they said. My response was, "It'll be the highlight of your season, I reckon."
Fantastic.
I just having a bit of banter with them. Some of them got a bit nasty, rude words, threats, and that kind of stuff. But and then the next day, I got a couple of lovely Facebook messages from Tranmere fans saying, "Look, that's not us. We support what you're doing," and it was just nice. I mean, there are good people out there. Football's no different to life in general.
True.
You get the odd extremist on social media.
Yeah, Kenny says, "Keep your nose out of my club's business, thanks." There you go.
Thanks,
told
Kenny.
off by Kenny.
Listen, it's everybody's business what happens in the EFL, Kenny.
That's true enough. Here's a question. I saw you posted a picture of Trump in a KKK mask. Are you sick? That's Martin on Facebook asked this.
Well, look, one of us is, me or Trump. So I'm going to leave you to decide which one of us is.
Yeah. Which is a timely moment in that case to have our Donald Trump clip of the week.
Equal justice under the law must mean that every American receives equal treatment in every encounter with law enforcement, regardless of race, color, gender, or creed. They have to receive fair treatment from law enforcement. They have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying, there's a great thing that's happening for our country. There's a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody.
Now, even by his standards, Dale, I mean, where was he going with that? What is the thinking of the man?
Donald Trump has introduced us to a kind of new reality during his presidency. He's turned logic on its head. He argues black is white. Accuses other people of doing exactly what he does himself. But I think this was the clip of his presidency. I have no idea what he thought he was doing when he said that. It was just...
a man who's just been murdered will be looking down saying it's a great day because they've got some jobs back in the market.
Yeah, if that's
I've got
what
a funny
exactly
feeling George Floyd wouldn't be thinking that somehow.
Oh, he's crazy. And
you can almost see him kind of, the psychology, the cogwheels turning as he's sort of riffing his way through this disaster. And it's kind of everybody around him. It's where you want the cartoonist to draw the air bubbles and the comments of what they must be thinking, because there's several people surrounding him as he's saying this. They must be dying inside.
Yeah, you'd hope. They deserve to be if they're still around him and supporting him. I do think that it's part of his tactic in politics, which is to be outrageous and to divide people, to be divisive. And it plays up to a certain element of the American population, his supporters, and he's stoking up his base. That's all he can do. He's got nothing else.
Well, on a related theme, I mean, let's get your view on Black Lives Matter, because of course this is all about protest, and we've both spoken about how the almost the sheer democratic beauty of protest, and it's what makes us all civil in an interesting way. And we know that there are pockets of people that go off script, and no one wants to see that. But broadly speaking, what are you making of what has happened in the last couple of weeks? Not just across the world, in this country too.
Yeah, well, obviously it started in America, and the Trump in a KKK mask was linked to that. I put up some thoughts on Facebook, and then we stuck this picture up with a caption: "This is Trump jumping out of his chopper," saying, Trump leaves the White House without first checking the mirror. That was our joke. And I've just been looking at what's happening in America, the militarization of the police force there, the tens of billions that they've been spending on military-grade weapons since the pullout from Iraq, mine-proof people carriers, assault rifles, grenade launchers and bayonets. I mean, these police forces up and down America over the last few years have just turned into paramilitary operations. And, the idea has been that the more hardware they have, the safer they can keep people. But there was a study released last week in America that shows that the most militarized police forces are killing twice as many people as the least, and that was after adjusting for social factors. And there's one of the good things for me coming out of this was the call to defund the police. I think it could only happen in America, and it's quite amazing. But local communities and politicians are saying, look, we've been sold a lie. All of this money being spent on policing doesn't protect us. It does the opposite. So let's reduce budgets of the police and actually spend it on the issues that the community needs to address, which I think is amazing. More generally, I think the protest, it is incredible, but, the racism being faced in America it exists here as well, no doubt about it. It's to a lesser degree. But I was reading in The Guardian a couple of days ago a forensic reconstruction of Mark Duggan. He was surrounded and shot by 11 armed police officers in London, and then they found a gun 7 meters away, which they claimed he threw, but none of them could remember seeing him throw it as he was shot. And this reconstruction says basically the conclusion of the inquest into his death was false. I mean, wow. It wasn't possible to reach that conclusion based on the evidence. So it exists here in Britain as well. So we've got a lot to do. I saw the statue of Colston pulled down in Bristol, and just thought that was brilliant. Actually, I mean, Bristol has a road named White Ladies Road, and I used to. When I first came to Bristol, wonder what the hell that was all about. But of course, it's rooted back in the days of slave trades.
Yeah. It's interesting. The lads that pulled the statue down. I mean, they'd clearly gone on to Wikipedia the day before, to look up how do you pull a statue down, because this wasn't just some tow rag that pitched up with a rope. I mean, this was military precision stuff. They knew how to attach it. They knew what to do, the right force to employ, where to stand so the thing doesn't topple up on top of your head. It was a military, incredible operation.
Well, I didn't know that, but one thing I did notice is that a certain amount of, let's say, hand-wringing and complaining by conservative politicians and media commentators about this being an act of violence and going beyond what they could accept, which was peaceful demonstration and stuff like that. And as somebody pointed out, we didn't hear that when the statue of Saddam Hussein was pulled down by American troops. Didn't hear that at all, did we? So the pulling down of statues seems to have a place in some people's eyes, and it wasn't in Bristol, the statue of a slave trader.
Just a final question. Tian by email says, any chance of a time of day tariff for ecotricity soon? Can you explain the question first, Dale?
Time of day tariffs are a fairly new idea, and they're only really possible because of the advent of smart metering. So in electricity and gas, let's say at the moment predominantly the meters are dumb. They need to be read manually. They get read periodically. And the actual shape of your consumption, if you were to graph it, let's say daily, is imposed by the industry. There's like a national average. So it doesn't matter when you use power. The industry tells you when you used power. Smart meters change all of that because they provide half-hourly readings, and your actual shape of consumption matters, and therefore can be applied to your cost of energy. There are different times of the day when energy is cheaper than at others. And certain events can influence that, like a windy day, for example, now that we have so much renewable energy. And so time of day tariffs are for people with smart meters and for people that can flex the time at which they use energy in accordance with the peaks and troughs of price on the grid. And there's not much demand for them in the country at the moment, and I don't think they will suit everybody, but they make some sense, absolutely. And we've got one coming, definitely. We're just a little bit preoccupied at the moment, swapping billing systems and obviously dealing with the lockdown and stuff like that. If I were predicting, I would say come autumn, we should be doing something.
So not that far away. Good work. Dale, we'll speak to you on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That was fun.
That was it for this one. Don't forget, of course, subscribe for free from your podcast provider so you get each new episode automatically. Leave a review too. Send your questions in. Best way to do that via social media. So make sure you follow Dale on Twitter, twitter.com/DaleVince or facebook.com/DaleVince. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Zero carbon.
East of